I was really shocked. In my previous life, I accidentally heard my sister-in-law's speech destroying her views. In order to avoid the trouble of stretch marks, my sister-in-law insisted on having a cesarean section and taking out the child when she was just 30 weeks pregnant. I know very well that this poses great risks to both the child and her body. Later, the whole family worked together to persuade her, which made her sister-in-law give up this idea. Later, my sister-in-law gave birth in full term and left ugly stretch marks on her belly. She suffered from postpartum depression and felt that I had ruined her life, so she tricked me to the roof and pushed me off. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the day my sister-in-law went to the hospital. My sister-in-law and I were pregnant at the same time, and it was also a prenatal checkup date that we had made on the same day. I accidentally heard my sister-in-law call, and when I saw her in the obstetrics and gynecology hospital, I rushed over to say hello, and I heard the conversation just now. I was shocked. Although I was not a medical student, I also knew that premature birth had a great impact on the child. The child has not developed completely in all aspects during the 30-week period, and the chance of illness after birth is greatly increased, and in severe cases, he will die. Thinking of this, I hurriedly interrupted my sister-in-law and could not let the child be born so early. My sister-in-law hurriedly hung up the phone when she heard my voice and said in a panic, "Why are you here? You don't have to worry about my affairs." I patiently persuaded that my sister-in-law had a premature birth, which would cause too much damage to the child's body and would affect her whole life in the future. We cannot be irresponsible to our children. My sister-in-law looked at me with a sneer. "I am different from a vulgar person like you. I will not sacrifice my health for the sake of my children." After that, she left on her own, and even called while walking. I didn't care about getting angry, and thought about convinced my sister-in-law, so I called my brother and my parents separately and told them that my sister-in-law wanted to dissect the child in advance. They became anxious when they heard this. My sister-in-law had asked someone to see her before. She was pregnant with a boy and the whole family attached great importance to it. In the evening, several of them surrounded her sister-in-law and persuaded her, but her sister-in-law finally agreed not to dissect the child in advance. Later, my sister-in-law and I started at the same time. My sister-in-law gave birth to a healthy baby boy weighing 7 pounds. The whole family was very happy, except for my sister-in-law. Every day she looked at her belly in the mirror and she cried. Even her nephew cried and wanted to drink milk. She turned a blind eye, thinking that it was she who delayed her beautiful figure. My sister-in-law had some light red stretch marks during her confinement period, and her waist was not as light as before. Every morning when she wakes up, she first looks at her body and whether her belly has gone down, but she doesn't want to recover so quickly. During the confinement period, my sister-in-law ignored the child's situation and watched live broadcasts every day, took some recovered medicines, which contained hormones and could not drink milk at all, but after spending so much money, her stomach still didn't work. My sister-in-law's spirits became worse and worse, and she began to regret her original decision. One day, when I came to visit my sister-in-law, she asked me to lift my clothes and look at my belly. I don't understand why, but I did it anyway. My sister-in-law circled around me, then pinched me again, and suddenly pinched my waist viciously, and then cursed, "It's all you are the one who harms me, which makes me become this person now. It's like a human or a ghost, but you don't have any stretch marks at all. Do you think you want to harm me on purpose?" I endured the pain and explained to my sister-in-law. I said that human physiques are different, I'm just lucky. But my sister-in-law couldn't listen to anything and just beat and scolded me like crazy. Later, I heard from my brother that my sister-in-law locked herself in the house and cried every day. One day a few months later, she tricked me to the rooftop and pushed me down while I was not paying attention. Only then did I realize that my sister-in-law was extremely resentful to me. If I live a lifetime again, I will never care about any of her idle things again. After realizing that I was reborn, my first reaction was to turn around and leave. But my sister-in-law just turned around and saw my back as she was about to leave. "Jingjing, when did you come?" My sister-in-law covered the phone with one hand and looked at me in surprise. "Did you hear me call?" "No," I waved my hands repeatedly. "I just arrived, I heard nothing." "Is that right?" My sister-in-law looked at me suspiciously. "Is there anything?" "Oh, nothing, that's fine, let's go first, goodbye" to my sister-in-law. After that, I ran away. If I stay for a second more, I am worried that my sister-in-law will rely on me in the future. Without my intervention this time, my sister-in-law really spent money to find a bad-hearted hospital at 30 weeks and dissected her nephew in advance. When my brother and the others found out, it was too late. The poor nephew gave birth to only more than 3 pounds, and her little hands were about the same size as an adult's thumb. Due to her weakness, she was inserted into a tube and put into an incubator as soon as she was born. It is really pitiful that I should continue to grow and develop in my mother's body, but because of my mother's selfishness, I have to come to this world in advance. My mother kept crying as soon as she was brought up, and my father was so angry that he fell several teacups at home. Jingjing, your sister-in-law wants to have a child in advance. Do you know that? I heard her say you were there on the day of the prenatal examination and went home that day. My brother was in front of his parents and suddenly asked me, last time my sister-in-law beat and scolded me, when I was mine, not only did I not help you, but also scolded you with my sister-in-law. Of course I wouldn't tell him the matter. Brother, you are stupid. If I know, I will definitely notify you. How could my sister-in-law tell me? My brother looked at me suspiciously and sighed, oh, if your sister knew, how could she not follow me? If she knew about it, she would not be able to follow me. Said. My mother scolded my brother in a slight manner, I can't even control my wife, what's the matter with Guanjingjing? Oh, I have pity for my eldest grandson. From birth to now, I have also hugged me. My mother cursed and shed tears again. My brother lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. In order to completely separate my relationship, I used the excuse of being unlucky for pregnant women to visit confinement. Until after I became pregnant, I took a vacation at home for 7 months. Before going to bed, I was bored and started browsing a short video platform, but I actually browsed my sister-in-law on it. My sister-in-law's ID is I am the Queen, and she has more than 100,000 fans on a certain platform. It turns out that my sister-in-law has created this account since she became pregnant. The videos are basically like women who love themselves the most. At first, she posted some cosplay videos after pregnancy, and at first, she took some heavy makeup and was very sexy in dressing, but no one liked it. Until one day, she posted a work, in which the sister-in-law said to the camera, I am going to dissect the child in advance when he is 30 weeks old. I don't want to have ugly stretch marks on my belly. I can't stand it. Even if I am a child, it is someone else's. I don't deserve to make me pay such a big price. I'm sorry, I really can't do it. I think we women are ourselves first. Then there was someone else's mother, so I had already made an appointment and was about to dissect the child in advance. My sister-in-law looked serious, as if this was an oracle. I was the queen, and I was the only one. This work is popular on the internet. Netizens commented on sister is so awesome. First, I am the mother, support the queen's sister and agree with the queen's speech. Every time I see those pregnant women who are fat and mothers sacrifice themselves. It's so pitiful. I don't have myself except for the child. I have worked hard to give birth to a child, so I'm not going to raise an ungrateful wolf, so I'm better if you can raise it casually. It is really good to live a good life. I am also pregnant. After reading this, I decided to lose weight if I should lose weight and put on makeup if I should. At that time, I will have a cesarean section early. I will still be a big beauty. Who knows that I have given birth to a baby? This idea is really good. Occasionally there are different voices, you are all crazy. 30 weeks, that's pretty premature. If you don't want to affect your body shape, you can choose not to get married and not have children. What is the difference between early cesarean section and murder? The child is on the street. Such an irresponsible mother is also in trouble. As a result, she was blown away by fans who support her sister-in-law. What murder? She is not born, she is just a piece of meat, and she is not considered a human being. It's a futile old woman, don't take your outdated thoughts on us. We can get married without having children, we can also have children without getting married, the main focus is a casual freedom. No matter what, it's all we have to decide for ourselves, we must be our own queen. What's wrong with premature birth? I'm just premature birth, but I'm still healthy? Support our queen to be ourselves. My sister-in-law liked the comments that supported her, and said that she would take her baby to take another video after giving birth. Thank you aunts for your expectations. The fans of I Am the Queen quickly increased to 500,000. The comments in the comment section shocked me, and it was simply a cult. The baby in my belly may have felt my uneasy and moved a few times. I lowered my head and touched my stomach comfortably. My husband Chin Yao beside me asked softly, what's wrong with me? Are you feeling uncomfortable? I smiled, it's okay, the old woman is going to sleep now. A few days later, my son Tang Yuan was born at full term. Just like in his previous life, Tang Yuan weighed 7 pounds when he was born, and is crying loudly, and he was very healthy. In the hospital, my mother was fascinated by the sleeping baby, but after a while, she couldn't help but sigh. Because I was worried that it would affect my mood during pregnancy, my mother never told me what happened later. It turned out that my nephew's lungs were not well developed, and his body was covered in purple when he was born. The doctor used a ventilator in time to rescue him. When he was out of danger, his nephew couldn't drink milk and vomited as soon as he drank it, and his face was often flushed. Every time my mother visited, she felt so distressed when she saw the wrinkled child like a monkey lying weakly in the insulated box. My nephew lived in the insulated box for more than a month before coming out, and he still weighs only 5 kilograms. My mother said that since my sister-in-law gave birth to a child, she looked like a different person, and put her mind on the child, holding her all day without letting go. My mother wanted to help her take care of her, but she didn't do it for a while, as if she was going to compete with her. I suddenly thought of something, took out my phone and clicked on the homepage of I Am the Queen and found that since the last video, my sister-in-law has never posted a new video. The fans in the comments are urging, I see the Queen bringing her baby to Flash. The first appearance was to blind those old women's eyes. But my sister-in-law has never been online. According to my mother, although the insulated box was released, my nephew's condition was still not very good. He often choked and his eyes were always dull. She was worried that the child would have problems and wanted to remind her sister-in-law, but every time she started, her sister-in-law would interrupt her like a collapse. My baby is fine. The baby is very healthy. Gradually, my mother didn't dare to say anything anymore. Jingjing, why don't you go and talk to mom? I quickly refused. I'm not a doctor, how can I understand? Besides, since my sister-in-law doesn't let me ask, let's just leave it alone. I don't want to be like in my previous life, because I'm too concerned. The idiot was pushed down from the roof and fell to pieces, and he died with his eyes closed. After being discharged from the hospital, I hired a confinement nanny to help me take care of the children at home. The confinement nanny is very capable and weighs him after bathing the dumplings every day. Seeing my son grow up healthily day by day, I think nothing can make me happier than this. My mother often comes to see me, and she sighs more and more times. Without asking, it must be about her nephew. When Tang Yuan was 3 months old, her hands could already grasp it and her head was steadily raised. I was so novel that I quickly shot the video of this surprise moment and sent it to the family group. My parents are very happy and asked me to take Qingao and my baby home for the Mid-Autumn Festival. As soon as I entered the house that day, I heard extremely sharp crying sounds. My sister-in-law was holding a cat-like nephew in her arms. She kept coaxing her mouth and sweating profusely while circling around the living room. When Tang Yuan heard the sound, she quickly stretched out her little hand and grabbed it in the direction of the sound. I smiled and said, "Wee little Tang Yuan, are you looking for your brother? He is your cousin Han Jiabao, come and meet him quickly." At this time, my sister-in-law suddenly turned her head and stared at Tang Yuan's open and closed hands with her eyes tightly. My sister-in-law hit Tang Yuan's hand with a bang. Tang Yuan was so scared that she shivered and then cried loudly. I said to my sister-in-law, "What are you doing?" My sister-in-law looked at Tang Yuan viciously, "Isn't it just a clutch? Brother, what am I showing off?" While coaxing the dumplings, I held back the fire and said, "The child just wants to find someone to play with, not to show off anything. I will be able to catch the tips for 3 months, so there is nothing to show off." My brother said in a depressed voice, "Han Jiabao doesn't know how to grab his hands yet, and his neck is soft." I was shocked. "Brother, didn't you take Han Jiabao to check?" Before my brother could speak, my dad said angrily, "Who dares to mention it? When you mention your sister-in-law, you will be anxious to say that Han Jiabao is normal, but you just learn a little slower than others." My sister-in-law gave my dad a blank look. "What do you know?" Guojing learned to speak only at the age of 4, and finally became a hero. All capable people are late for great success, and my Bauer will definitely be normal in the future. I glanced at my sister-in-law and wanted to say something, but I endured it. But Chen Gao was anxious and cursed directly, "Your head was kicked by a donkey? The child is abnormal, and he is still thinking about finding comfort from the novel. And your own child, you don't have snacks. You check the internet, it is normal for a child who is 3 months old to be able to hold his hands and raise his head. He should go to the hospital for examination and delay the child. You will cry." When my sister-in-law heard this, she cursed like crazy. "Who do you think is abnormal? I think you are abnormal. You said my Bauer is abnormal. My Bauer is already good at catching things, but he is shy and doesn't want to be with you in normal times. Just show in front of you." Chen Gao sneered, "I don't believe it, I'm afraid he doesn't know." When my sister-in-law heard this, she picked up a small toy and stuffed it into Han Jiabao's little hand. "Jiabao, be good, grab it, listen to your mother." The whole family's eyes were focused on Han Jiabao to see how he would react. But Han Jiabao just stared at his sister-in-law with his round eyes, but his hands didn't react at all. Everyone's faces were not very good-looking. Seeing that it was useless to say anything, my sister-in-law simply reached out to break Han Jiabao's thin fingers. "Take it for me." why are you so unscrupulous? Woo. My sister-in-law cried in anger, and Han Jiabao was also scared to tears. The house is in chaos. Chen Gao found an opportunity to say to my brother, "Brother, listen to my advice, don't worry about what your wife says, hurry up and take the child to check. No matter what, we feel at ease." My brother was a little hesitant at first, but when he saw the dumplings, he seemed to have made up his mind. A few days later, my mother called me crying and said she took Jiabao to the hospital. She was diagnosed today. Due to premature birth, Jiabao suffered from cerebral palsy and could not be cured for life. I put down the phone and felt very heavy because my sister-in-law's wrong decision hurt Jiabao's life. I wonder if he regrets it now. Later, my sister-in-law resigned. Because Jiabao was sick, she had to take Jiabao for rehabilitation treatment every day. My brother has become busier, going out early and coming back late. Although I live with my parents, my sister-in-law doesn't trust the elderly and thinks they are old and do things roughly, so everything about Han Jiabao is basically taken care of by my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law used to be a fashionista and pays great attention to appearance, but now she puts all her thoughts on her son and no longer dresses up. In order to facilitate taking care of her children, she cut her hair short and is too lazy to take care of her skin. He is more than 10 years older than his actual age. My mother said, "Actually, your sister-in-law has regretted it for a long time, but she has been reluctant to say it." Time flies quickly, and it is the age to enter school in a blink of an eye. Under the careful care of his sister-in-law, Han Jiabao slowly learned to walk and speak, but he was a little unnatural and could not speak clearly. He could not understand the addition and subtraction within 10. My brother wanted to apply for a year later to enroll, but my sister-in-law was a strong person. Seeing Tang Yuan was about to go to elementary school, she also wanted Han Jiabao to go to school. The thing is simple, but we don't know how to teach him, and he is not stupid. My brother said, he is almost 7 years old. He can't understand and doesn't know many words. His legs and feet are not convenient. The difference between him and children now is too big. Don't go. You are disgusting, Han Jiabao, are you? Han Jiabao is full of shortcomings in your eyes, it's just so unbearable, right? My sister-in-law's eyes were filled with tears. No, I'm afraid he will be bullied. My brother quickly explained. My sister-in-law suddenly beat my brother like crazy, you just dislike him. He is your biological son, do you look down on him so much? What's worse than others? The sister-in-law's shrill cry scared Han Jiabao, who was painting aside, and she burst into tears. My parents, who were in another room, heard the quarrel between brother and sister-in-law, and quickly ran out to persuade the fight. The depression that has been curing Jiabao for many years is released at this moment. My sister-in-law cried like crazy and kept asking my brother to admit that Jiabao is a normal child. Seeing this, my parents advised my brother to agree to send Han Jiabao to school. I think Han Jiabao is not inferior to others, but he is not worse than others. Let him go. Besides, the school is close to our home, so we can go there as soon as possible if we have any problems. Hearing this, my sister-in-law suddenly raised her face with tears on her face. If you don't go to public primary schools, we have to go to private ones too. Let's go with Tang Yuan. Qin Gao and I didn't consider the school district when we bought a house. There were 4 bedrooms and 2 living rooms in the house. We decided to send Tang Yuan to a private primary school for the future of our children, but the tuition was more expensive, nearly 40,000 yuan a year, but I both Qin Gao have stable income, but they can afford it. On the day of admission, I met my sister-in-law at the gate of experimental primary school. My sister-in-law wore a sun hat and led Jiabao to shuttle through the crowd. Jiabao Tang Yuan was the first to see Jiabao and greeted him happily. When Jiabao heard the sound, he slowly turned his head, his eyes straight and his face was dull. My sister-in-law saw me and walked towards me. I had no choice but to say hello, sister-in-law, why are you here to study in experiments? My sister-in-law sneered, what? Do you think you can laugh if you go to a good school? Or do you think my family has no money to go to a private school? I said, sister-in-law, I don't mean that. My sister-in-law said, haha, let me tell you the truth. Our parents paid half of Han Jiabao's tuition. After all, they are their own grandsons, which are different from their grandsons. My sister-in-law said proudly, Jiabao's status, I think it can make me angry? But in fact, I don't care at all. Before entering the school gate, I told Tang Yuan, what did he say to go to school? He should listen to the teacher and drink more water. At this time, Tang Yuan took Han Jiabao's hand and said, let's go together, I'll tell you something fun. Han Jiabao was passively held by Tang Yuan, and was at a loss and limped behind him. My sister-in-law is half a head taller than Han Jiabao, and she is lively and active. This comparison makes Han Jiabao look thin and pitiful. My sister-in-law frowned and stared at their backs, her teeth almost biting her lips and bleeding. Seeing this, I didn't even say hello and left. It's really fate that makes people foolish. I wanted to stay away from my sister-in-law, but our children went to the same school again. Stop. My sister-in-law suddenly called me from behind, and I turned around and felt an inexplicable sense of hostility. My sister-in-law said, "I ask you, you obviously heard me calling someone that day, why didn't you stop me? You were so close to me at that time, and I'm sure you heard everything. When you heard that I wanted to dig out the treasure in advance, let him become a poor premature birth, but you don't care about anything. Now Jiabo has become like this. Do you think you did it on purpose?" My sister-in-law was so angry that she gritted her teeth at me. My sister-in-law is actually still worried about what happened 7 years ago. What's even more terrifying is that she attributes all the responsibility to me. I pondered for a moment, smiled and said, "I don't understand what you are saying. I really didn't hear anything at that time." I looked into my sister-in-law's eyes and said, "Will Han Jiabao become like this? Isn't it because of you?" After saying this, I turned around and left, and the sister-in-law was crying too much. After Tang Yuan came back, he happily described the school's experience to me, and specifically emphasized that he and Han Jiabao were assigned to the same class. I was worried when I heard this and said, "Tang Yuan, listen to my mother, can I stop playing with Han Jiabao?" Tang Yuan tilted his head in confusion. "Mom, don't you often tell me to help people in difficulties? Han Jiabao's legs are not good, so he needs help." I was speechless. The child's heart was always pure. I didn't know how to explain the complex relationship between adults to him, so I had to let him go. From then on, Tang Yuan officially started primary school life. He has a cheerful personality and many friends, but his truest friend is his cousin Han Jiabao. Every day when Tang Yuan comes home, he talks to me about interesting things happening in school. Whenever he talks about Han Jiabao, his little face will collapse. According to him, Han Jiabao's grades were the last in the class. Before entering school, everyone will basically learn pinyin arithmetic in advance. I have learned a lot of words, which is equivalent to mastering all the knowledge of the first grade in advance. This is the case in the general environment, and the teacher speaks very quickly in class, which makes Han Jiabao unable to keep up at all. It's not that my sister-in-law has taught Han Jiabao, but because Han Jiabao is slow to develop and learns very slowly, he can't say clearly. So far, even a complete sentence is stuttering, and he can't even calculate addition and subtraction within 10. So soon, Han Jiabao became the worst student in the class and even the whole grade. Everyone knows that Class 2, Grade 1, has a child with a stupid head, a bad mouth, and a sick leg. Not long after, Han Jiabao became a marginal figure in the class. No one was willing to play with him except Tang Yuan. Although Han Jiabao reacted slowly, he understood everything in his heart. Later, because he was different from others, he felt a little inferior. Now he was regarded as a transparent person. He became even more disliked and lowered his head in class and held his hands back. The teacher would ask him questions, but he was slow to react. My sister-in-law was very anxious about Han Jiabao's study situation. Once, Tang Yuan saw her sister-in-law carrying something to look for the teacher, and somehow she cried in the office. Tang Yuan asked me, "Mom, brother Han Jiabao is a very good person, why is he different from us?" I don't know how to answer him. After a while, I was working in the company and suddenly I received a call from my class teacher, saying that Tang Yuan was fighting with someone at school and asked me to come to school immediately. I rushed to the school anxiously and found that besides me, my sister-in-law was there. My sister-in-law's hair was messy, her face was full of color, and her clothes were torn apart, and she looked like a lioness who was fighting. After looking again, the mothers on the opposite side were also injured, and the children were trembling in the corner, including Tang Yuan and Han Jiabao. The teacher said, "What happened? This scene is so scary." But when I saw that the children were all fine, I felt half relieved. The head teacher was already in a state of anxiety and said, come on, you guys say it again." It turned out that it was because the dumplings were on duty today. Han Jiabao went out to play by himself, and no one accompanied him, so he squatted under the tree and caught ants alone. But at this time, 3 children came, and these 3 children were in the same class as Han Jiabao. They usually disliked him, but this time Tang Yuan was not there, so they surrounded Han Jiabao and laughed at him, saying that he was a mentally retarded. Han Jiabao wiped his tears and wanted to leave, but his legs were inconvenient, which caused a burst of ridicule from behind. Han Jiabao was in a hurry to go down the steps. Seeing this, several bad children simply pushed him from behind. Han Jiabao didn't stand firm and rolled down from 10 steps high. Just after I came out after I swept the dumplings, I saw this scene. He started fighting with them without saying a word. Fortunately, the teacher arrived in time and none of the kids who fought were injured. But Han Jiabao's knee was broken a lot and had been bandaged in the infirmary. Mom said, they started the move first. I just can't stand them bullying people. I'm right. Tang Yuan cried and said, Mom, I'm right. After hearing this, my sister-in-law was excited again and said, why should 3 little beasts who have mothers but not mothers teach me, why should I bully my son? Cheng Xiaonan's mother cursed, who are you calling a beast? I want to ask, how can the mentally retarded go to school with normal people? My sister-in-law was so angry, who are you calling me mentally retarded? Your child is mentally retarded, and she is so laughing. I heard from my Xiaonan that she still can't make up her mind and can't even explain her words. The teachers hate her and say she has dragged down all the grades of our class. We have specially paid to attend private schools, so we have arranged such people to be classmates? We have to complain and report to the Education Bureau. The other 2 mothers quickly agreed, yes, the private school we spend money to let the children make excellent friends. What should I do if the children are stupid when they study with him? Several teachers in the office stepped forward to stop them, but they couldn't stop them. The sister-in-law scolded her, but the 3 of them were so angry that they trembled all over and their bodies twitched. Finally, they fell to the ground and fainted. At this time, the 3 parents finally stopped and each led their children away. My sister-in-law was on the ground for a long time and finally woke up. She hugged Jiabao and cried loudly. While crying, she pounded her chest, it's all my mother's fault, it's all my fault. Everyone stood aside silently, not knowing how to comfort her. After that day, Jiabao never came to school again. My mother said that my sister-in-law finally accepted the reality and decided to let Han Jiabao enroll 1 year later. Tang Yuan was depressed for a while. After all, she was a child. She quickly threw this matter behind her mind and smiled on her face. I had few homework in the 1st grade, so I signed him up for several interest classes, all of which he liked, one of which was chess. He seemed to be very talented in chess. He played well after only 1 year of study. He had no opponents in his chess school. My dad was very happy when he found out, and he also liked playing chess. There is an old Zhang in the community who plays a good chess game, but unfortunately he is too damaging. Every time he wins, he will hurt my father a few words. But my father talks more to him and wins less. This time the community is going to hold a chess competition, so my dad wants Tang Yuan to play on his behalf, and humiliate Lao Zhang to the top. Tang Yuan is also successful. On my father's birthday, Tang Yuan defeated Lao Zhang too in one fell swoop and won the championship of the community chess competition. Old Zhang was defeated by an 8-year-old child and was disguised on the spot. He hurriedly left amid the laughter of everyone, not even daring to look at my dad. My dad returned triumphantly with the dumplings in his arms. In the evening, Qin Gao booked a private room, and the whole family, including brother and sister-in-law, came. I beat Lao Zhang during the day. As soon as my father relieved his years of depression, he was happy and drank a few more glasses of wine. After a few glasses of wine, my dad started to speak without hesitation, it must be my dumplings. Look at my eldest grandson. How handsome and smart the young man is. He is obviously the child of my Han family. My sister-in-law said unevenly, Dad, Tang Yuan's surname is Chen, not Han, Jiabao is your biological grandson. My dad twitched his face, Jiabao is not good, he is not like a boy, he has no energy at all, and he still doesn't speak well. He is not a child of my old Han family. When Jiabao heard that he seemed to have made a mistake, he immediately lowered his head. My sister-in-law was dissatisfied, why is it the child of my Han family? Is his surname Han? My sister-in-law wanted to say something, but my brother stopped her. My sister-in-law had to shut up with anger. My dad didn't hear what she said after drinking too much. He looked at Tang Yuan with a smile, then took out a bank card and handed it to him. Tang Yuan, there is 100,000 yuan here. I will study hard in the future, and Grandpa will also have a reward. We were all shocked, and our sister-in-law's face collapsed with naked eyes. Tang Yuan's head was shaking like a wave drum. Grandpa, I can't ask for so much money. My sister-in-law hid behind her and refused to answer. Qin Gao and I also quickly said, Dad, the child cannot get so much money. You can collect it yourself before. As a result, my dad forced Tang Yuan's hand and stuffed the bank card into his hand desperately. He said with his tongue wide, what's more, not more. Grandpa's money will be yours in the future. Tang Yuan refused to accept it. Han Jiabao clapped his hands and smiled ignorantly. The adults looked different, and the private room was in chaos for a while. My sister-in-law suddenly stood up and shouted, "Enough." For a moment, everyone became quiet. My sister-in-law pointed at my dad and said in a trembling voice, "I know, Dad, you have always despised Jiabao. Since his birth, you have never been willing to take him to the community to bask in the sun, for fear that others will laugh at you. Jiabao is yours. My grandson, but when did you love him? When did you visit Han Jiabao with the same eyes as you look at Tang Yuan? Now you still say these words in front of Han Jiabao and give Tang Yuan money. Don't be too biased as a grandfather." My dad was half awake and became angry when he heard what his sister-in-law said. He smashed the wine glass hard on the table. "I will give my money to whoever I like, and it's not your turn, a wife, to interrupt. If you hadn't had you cut him out in advance, Han Jiabao would have been as smart and healthy as Tang Yuan now. A great-grandson, you know how he became like this now." My sister-in-law was scolded to death. She stood there blankly, unable to say a word of rebuttal, so she could only push my brother with her hands. "Are you dead? Are you just watching your dad bully Han Jiabao like this?" My brother lowered his head and drank in silence. At first, he didn't say anything. It was not until his sister-in-law pushed and shoved like crazy that he finally said, "Divorce." My sister-in-law couldn't believe her ears. "What?" My brother looked up at her and said, "I said divorce. I can't live a day with you." My sister-in-law said in disbelief, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" My brother didn't say anything. My sister-in-law picked up a glass of wine. It was handed directly to my brother's face. "Hanja, you are not a human." Unexpectedly, my brother suddenly stood up and slapped his sister-in-law to the ground. Then he beat and scolded, "You still have the face to scold my dad? How much has my parents paid for Jiabao for so many years? Isn't it because of you? You don't make money every day. I just knew I wanted money. I've given you your salary card." My sister-in-law is exhausted every day when she goes to work. She still depends on your expression when she gets home. Get out quickly." My brother is usually a dull man, and he doesn't even retaliate when his sister-in-law says anything. This time, he released the pressure and resentment he had accumulated for many years at one time, and smashed his sister-in-law with a raindrop-like fist. My sister-in-law squatted on the ground with her head in her arms, without any strength to fight back. The rest of us tried our best to pull him, but my brother was like a crazy man bull, beating him to death with red eyes. It was not until Qingao gave it to the back of my brother's head that he woke up. When my sister-in-law was mothering, she made a long and shrill cry. My brother was detained for domestic violence, and it was the police reported by the neighbor next door. My sister-in-law thought my brother beat him up, and after she was angry, she no longer wanted to divorce. But my brother proposed to divorce the first day after he came out, and proposed that Han Jiabao be raised by him. My sister-in-law disagreed and said that it would be more uncomfortable to leave the child than to take his life. Moreover, since Han Jiabao was diagnosed, his sister-in-law quit her job and put her whole body and mind on Han Jiabao. With his education and age, he is not competitive in the workplace at all, and his parents' family can't help at all. Even if Han Jiabao belongs to him, he can't afford it with his own abilities. So my sister-in-law refused to divorce, and my brother said he would divorce him no matter what. Gradually, my parents' attitude also changed, and they began to persuade my sister-in-law to divorce. My sister-in-law kept dragging it until he came home one time when he found that the lock at home had been changed. My sister-in-law said that as long as you agree to the divorce, the conditions can be negotiated. My sister-in-law was desperate and could only find a cheap hotel to stay in. The next day, he was guarding the door of my brother's company and saw him get in the car with a young girl after get off work. My sister-in-law finally understood why my brother suddenly became so ruthless. My sister-in-law looked at her bloated figure and felt that her efforts over the years were a joke. My sister-in-law decided to expose all this and set up an account in a certain voice called Hanja's Whole Family Loses Money to expose my brother's shameless behavior. She posted 5 videos in one breath about her experiences over the years. When it comes to emotions, tears are heard. The child has the worst starting point, but without a mother, I will never give up on her. Of course, she hid the experience of throwing the child out in advance. In the video, my sister-in-law appears without makeup, looks haggard, her eyes are dull, and wrinkles are all over the corners of her eyes. She looks like a great woman who has made contributions to her family. Several videos attracted a lot of traffic, and the click rate was very high. Everyone sympathized with her sister-in-law and gave her advice. Especially there are several mothers whose children are also mentally depressed due to premature birth. Similar misfortunes make them empathize with their sister-in-law and become her loyal fans. Below every video, they comfort and encourage and often leave messages. For a time, the video of Hanja's family losing money set off a big craze on her, and some lawyers took the initiative to contact her sister-in-law and wanted to help her fight a divorce lawsuit for free. But a few days later, someone left a message below. Do you think she looks very much like the blogger of the internet celebrity I Am the Queen several years ago? Someone echoed, I also think it's like this, but I just don't dare to say it, and the sound is the same, the position on the chin is the same, and the address of the highlight is the same. Someone else tagged the homepage of I Am the Queen and more people went to watch. I'm sure it's the same person. She was also a fan of her in the past. I really didn't expect that she will become like this now. Didn't it mean that women should be themselves forever? Why have they become an ant? The liar is disgusting. Ha ha ha, it's the Queen. Online just listen to the words, but there are really people who believe it. I saw that she had broken her mind and had to have an early dissection. My husband disagreed. She had a fight and divorced. I regret it every day now. So the reason why Han Jiabao gave birth was that she had a premature birth in advance. In order not to have stretch marks, she is such a vicious woman. I can't believe that there is such a selfish mother in the world. She is still embarrassed to come out and sell miserable money now. I think it's unlucky. It's her husband. After the incident fermented, more and more people participated. Oh my God, it depends on my mother-in-law who knows her. She threw out the child without hiding the whole family. The cost of the subsequent treatment was all paid by her parents-in-law. A good child was ruined like this. Such a daughter-in-law is really a family home unlucky. Public opinion was overturned, and my sister-in-law urgently cancelled the account of I Am the Queen, but this further confirmed that they were the same person. My sister-in-law was soon released, and a large-scale online violence began. The leading one was the mothers who left her messages to comfort her every day. Their children were born early for some major reasons, and after going through many hardships, they saved their little life. When they learned that his sister-in-law had turned her child into premature birth for such incredible reasons, they were furious. My sister-in-law was scolded until she cancelled her account and stayed in the hotel every day and didn't dare to go out. My brother wanted to contact her, but she kept not answering the phone. A few days later, my mother called me and said that when she picked up Jiabao after school today, the teacher said that his mother had picked him up in advance. Soon I received a call from my sister-in-law, who told me to go to the top of the tallest building in the community at 6 p.m., otherwise they would take Han Jiabao to jump from above. That was exactly where she pushed me down the stairs in her previous life. I notified the whole family and called the police at the same time, but because the phone said that I was only allowed to go up alone, they were all waiting anxiously downstairs. I came to the roof and saw my sister-in-law standing on the edge with Jiabao. This is a 33-story high-rise building, standing on the roof. You can see the setting sun in the distance, like blood. Jiabao sat on the ground, licking the lollipop quietly. Nothing is known about what is coming. After not seeing each other for a few days, my sister-in-law has completely changed. My sister-in-law didn't even see me coming. My sister-in-law pulled the corner of her mouth. You're still here. You let Han Jiabao come over. A distance of 3 meters, I said. It's here. My sister-in-law didn't answer, and I continued. I pushed you down. You're actually here. My heart trembled violently. I remembered it all. So you are taking revenge on me, right? You clearly heard me call and heard me say I wanted to cut Han Jiabao out in advance, but you didn't stop me. You choose to be a bystander, watch all this coldly, watching Han Jiabao grow up as a poor premature baby. You are trembling all your life, and I am really inferior to you. Son, you must be very happy when you see your parents pay more attention to your son, right? Do you think so? My sister-in-law suddenly yelled, and Jiabao, who was standing beside her, shivered. I'm not as bad as you think. In my previous life, I was meddled with nosy business and ended up being pushed downstairs and killed by you. Do you think I will be stupid enough to follow the old path after being reborn? I don't care. My sister-in-law said sharply, you can clearly change the method, a method I can accept, so that you can save Han Jiabao's life, but you don't want to. Is Han Jiabao's life important, or is your life important? I smiled. What nonsense are you talking about? It was clearly you who insisted on dissecting Han Jiabao in advance, but you harmed him for the rest of your life. Now do you want to transfer the responsibility to me? I took a step forward, or is it that only by thinking this way can you make your mentality feel better? My sister-in-law looked at me blankly and suddenly covered her ears with her hands. Stop talking, stop talking. You can't accept this reality, but it has happened. Let Jiabao come over, the child is innocent, don't hurt him. My sister-in-law smiled sadly. No one in this world loves him more than me, and no one is more afraid that he will be hurt than me. In your eyes, he is a child with low intelligence and unpleasantness. Only I know that he is an angel who came to save me. I never thought I would love him so much. When he was born, I regretted it when I saw him lying in the incubator as little as I was. I really regret it. But it's too late. My sister-in-law suddenly burst into tears, and Jiabao looked at her at a loss, trying hard to comfort her mother with her little hands. My sister-in-law cried for a while, suddenly picked up Jiabao and stepped onto the guardrail with one leg. I don't want to live anymore, I want to start over. Jiabao, I took it away, and I also suffered with his father. Baby, we will be mother and son in the next life. As he said that, his sister-in-law leaned outward. Without time to think about it, I rushed over as fast as possible, and one hand could just grab Jiabao's calf. At this time, most of my sister-in-law's body was already hanging in the air. Jiabao was tightly held in her arms by her sister-in-law, and my strength was simply beyond her. Just in the flash of lightning, my sister-in-law actually let go. I rushed forward desperately and finally grabbed Han Jiabao with both hands. My sister-in-law's eyes were closed and her back fell down. Although the police placed air cushions in advance, due to the high floor, my sister-in-law was seriously injured and was quickly declared dead after being sent to the hospital. This round of online violence gradually faded with the death of his sister-in-law, leaving only a few sighs on the internet. Han Jiabao, who witnessed the whole process, was so scared that he didn't speak for several days. My brother took annual leave and focused on staying at home to accompany him. As for the mistress, he insisted that he was just an intern under his command, and the two were just superiors and subordinates, and now he has resigned. There is no way to know the truth. My mother said that as long as my brother is willing to continue making money and his family treats Han Jiabao, he will let him go. That day, I sprained my arm because I saved Han Jiabao. On the way home from the hospital, Qin Gao complained to me. I didn't even notify him of such a dangerous thing. He was still browsing his phone and only then did he realize that such a big thing had happened at home. But I can't figure out why he talks to you alone. To prevent others from asking this question, I took out a recorder. This is the answer. Qin Gao couldn't come back after listening for a long time. Do you believe it? I asked him with a smile. I can't believe it, but this is what you said, so I believe it. I smiled. Everyone is a sister-in-law and has a hysteria, but it doesn't matter. It's enough to prove that she jumped on her own. If there is still a chance, I look at the distant sky and believe she will definitely choose a completely opposite path. In that world, Han Jiabao will definitely grow up healthily. The full text is over.